Hello, everybody. This is Isaac and Audrey, and
Hey,
we're going to be doing some recording. Uh, I was the main developer of this MonsterUI framework, and we wanted to show it to you. And Audrey's got a lot of experience in, web development, and wrote a pretty well-known book, Two Scoops of Django. Um, so, we're gonna walk through this together.
excited to do this with you, Isaac.
Yeah. So. I think what we're going to do is we're going to start with creating the start of a blog. And so let me share my screen and we can walk through what we're hoping to accomplish. So I've got this folder and we want to make a blog. And I've got two getting started posts, and these are markdown. So we went to render as markdown. This is the first time Audrey's seeing this, so this is a real live demo. And we've got some like YAML metadata in the header with like a title, description, who the author, the date, some tags, and a link to an image. Um, and so
Oh,
we want to make
great.
like blog cards, things that look good, and render it and have different posts and all that.
So what we're seeing, this is this is how you would blog. You'd create one of these markdown files and create that front matter section above and then put your post in the main section.
Yeah, yeah, for this one. And what we'll see is we're going to write the everything to parse this. And so if you have a different format you prefer, you'll be able to swap that in.
Nice.
All right. So the images that we're using are from Pixum, and they're kind of their motto is the lorem ipsum of images. So they'll every time you pull, it'll pull a new image. Um, and yeah, I guess we'll get started. So
Can we
here's
actually look at one of those images in the browser just so we
yeah.
understand real quick what's getting put into our blog? Okay, so I guess, and what role does the image have in the blog post? Is that like part of the thumb? Is this just, I mean, I guess these are just placeholders for the blog post, like the social media thumbnail, or
Yeah, well, we're gonna do it for like the blog card. So if you look at here and you can see my Quarto blog, we want some sort of image for each post just to look nice.
I
And so
see.
we're not gonna recreate this exactly, but this kind of thing where you got metadata, you have an image, you can see stuff.
Okay,
Um,
awesome.
cool. So this is our app right now, and side by side here. As we get started, like my goal is to like start getting feedback as quickly as possible. So like right now I can't get any because I have no output. And so that's what I want to start with. Um, we can import our fast HTML to import Monster UI, import that. We have some documentation here and this getting started. You can see this code is, here, and we can see how to initiate the app
Oh, great.
there. We'll kind of bounce back and forth between the docs a little bit. So now that we have our app, kind of the standard pattern for a fast HTML app is we serve at the bottom. And the next thing we need is we need an actual route. So the fastest way to get feedback on what we're doing is to make a hello world. And then we can, let's clear, and then Python main.
So this main.py, so this is where we're building the blog from scratch, like besides this file, like all we have are a couple of markdown files and Um, we'll see what this is right now.
Yeah, so we've got Hello World. So we can start getting feedback on what we're building. Like we can actually see things as we build. And that's important, whether you're building in Cursor or Vim or
That's
Jupyter
awesome.
Notebooks. Trying to build the entire page and then seeing what it looks like is a frustrating experience because then you just run into bug after bug. So one step at a time. So we want to have a listing of posts. This is our main page. The first thing we need is we need a listing of our blog posts. And so we can do that. So we can say something like uh, os.lister for posts. Let's see. Okay, we can actually see our posts. We
Great.
can
I,
we
I
can
have
do.
a I have a question before we get a little too before we get too far. Yeah, just sorry to interrupt.
Oh no, no, great.
Uh,
This is great.
the okay, so when you like when you use fast app there, I noticed you have live equals true. What does that do again?
Yeah, so live equals true helps with once you make a change to your file, it helps do a live reload. So let me make sure this is working. So here I didn't have to click refresh for the page to refresh.
Okay, great.
Once I save it, I can see, well, in that case I did. So for some reason it's not fully working now. But the live equals true is for development, and the idea is that when we use this, it should do a hot refresh. Like once I save the file, my page refreshes, and it just saves me from having to hit Command R to refresh the page.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, so we've got our, most simple list of posts that we can, which is just a list of the files in a list.
Okay.
So this is our starting point to get started. So we can,
So wait,
instead of, oh, go ahead.
let me just digest what you wrote before you get further ahead.
Oh, yeah. So we have an
Students.
unordered list,
Okay.
and inside of it, we're going to say every single list item, every single list, or every single post, because I'm just listing the directory of posts, and I'm going to put a list item in it.
Okay. Oh, so you're okay. Got it. Cool.
Yeah, so we can try now. What we want is a card. In MonsterUI here, we have documentation for cards,
Okay.
and we have various example cards. Here you can flip the source and the output. And so you see one you like, this one looks, nice. You can copy and paste it. We'll, in the spirit of things, kind of build this from scratch, but this looks like a good
Okay.
blog card to use.
So these are like little recipes of like snippets you can bring into your apps, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the nice thing is it shows you kind of how to build these things, but you're not kind of beholden to copy them because when you look at this, it looks like a nice blog card, but it's not super complicated. You can say I have an image with a source
Mm-hmm.
and a width. So like that's fairly understandable,
Sure.
you know. Some of the stuff is rise like what is space Y3? We'll talk about that, a little bit later when we get into it. But it's like we have an H4, that's big text. We have a paragraph. We have this thing called a div fully spaced. That's a new concept, but it's a div where you take everything inside it and you space it out as much as possible. And
Cool.
so if you look at the name and the date,
Mhm.
div fully spaced said like, okay, put as much space them out as much as possible and put them side to side.
Oh,
And
okay. Like
so
space like left and right.
yeah, or if there
Yeah.
was three elements, there'd be one in the middle.
Ah, okay.
You know,
Cool.
if there was four, there'd be, and four. So it just tries to space them out as much as possible. And that's using Flexbox, but the nice thing is you don't really necessarily have to dive into the weeds of Flexbox because we have these kinds of functions.
Nice.
So let's start building the cards. So the first thing we need to build the cards is we need um, so let's just map a card to each of these. So for every post, we now have a card.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's awesome.
So now we want a blog card. So I'm going to go ahead and create a separate blog card function we can use. And right now, all it's going to do is return a card with the post in it. We'll say file path, file name.
These cards are these Monster UI's default cards?
Exactly. Exactly. It's this card here. You can see there's some options that we'll be using. But yeah,
Right.
this is just the default you get when you import Monster UI.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So what we want really for it is we want the title and the description. That's kind of the first step. And so we really want
Okay.
all this stuff from the file.
Okay.
So the first thing we need to do is get the contents of the file. So we can say with open our posts, the file name, we want to read it. We can say content is equal to f.read. Now instead we can put the content in the card. So this is a good step. It looks very ugly because it's just the raw text content. Um,
Well, that's very satisfying already. Like it feels like a first real step toward a blog.
yeah, it's getting there. So next thing we need is we only want this. And so we can think about how we want to split it up. These three dashes are the convention. So we can do that. So let's do our metadata. Thank you, cursor. Well, I won't thank it yet. We'll see if it got it right. All right, so yeah, so we have all of our metadata here, so that's nice.
Oh, great.
What we need is we need to process this so it's not just text. Okay, good. We've got a dictionary now.
Oh, cool.
So in our card, instead of just putting it all there, let's say it's getting a little ahead of itself, but I'll take some of it. So here we have a card. We're going to put the meta title, the title in an H3 and the description in a P tag. So now we've
Oh,
got
beautiful.
it's getting there.
Wow.
Let's see what else we've got. We have author, date, categories, and image. So let's just put all of these in there just to see what it looks like. Author, date, categories, and image. Okay, so we've got all
Wow.
the information in the cards. Let's
I have a question. So okay, so we have this route and we are just returning the like this list of blog cards in there. Is there um like at this point what what else is on the page like wrapping all of this stuff?
oh, you mean in the what's on the page now, or what are we going to add to the page?
Yeah, what's on the page currently?
Yeah, so if we look here, we can we can dive in. So the cards are the only thing we added, but in the
Okay.
headers, we have information for you can see HTMX is loaded in. That's what we'll be using. There's some JavaScript from fast HTML that you have access to. There's the Franken UI styling. Monster UI uses Franken UI. It uses Daisy UI and other stuff as well, but Franken UI is like the core, the biggest styling tool that we use. Um, and it's got Tailwind. Now, some of these styles here, you'll see this is syncing up Daisy UI with Franken UI. So, like if you change the theme and the colors, they both change it with you. Um, we've got, let's see here, yeah, some HTMX stuff. So really just the headers. And when you
Okay.
look at
So
the
it's
body, it's just those two cards. It's the only thing in the body.
okay. And the headers come from Fast App and so like the monster when you do
Fast App and
monsterui.all,
this.
you're using Monster UI's version of Fast App, is that right?
Exactly, exactly. And what that does is there's a couple things it does kind of on the behind the scenes. Is one, you'll see this HTML class. So Monster UI adds that HTML class and it adds these background classes to the body. And that's what it needs to do all the styling and the theme changes. And so
Okay.
it adds that boilerplate. And then this theme dot slate or dot blue or whatever you want dot headers, these add all the Monster UI specific ones. If you say, you know what, I actually don't need the stuff that's backed by Daisy UI, you can say Daisy equals false, and it won't bring in the Daisy UI stuff. Um,
Oh,
while you're
cool.
developing, at least, I recommend just kind of bringing it all in, building, and then figuring out how to limit it later if you're not using anything from a module.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Isaac.
Yeah, this is great. So, um, I guess we can try to load this image. So what I'm trying to do is slowly get to the point where like I can see more and more of like the vision of what I'm building. And it's kind of hard to see what we want to build without an image. It's like that's going to be the biggest thing in the card
Yeah.
probably. So so let's add that image. So instead of a P tag, we can use an image. We can say that's the source. Okay, great.
It's coming
So
alive.
it's coming alive. It's coming alive. So here's what we can do. We want the image first. We want everything else to be second. All right. So now if we want these side by side, there's a few things you could do. We could say, I want everything inside here to use div L aligned or div horizontally stacked. And what that will do, it'll put things next to each other, essentially. As many things as you pass, it'll kind of keep stacking them next to each other, just like this.
Okay. Wait a sec. Let me just study that a bit. Okay, so
We've
horizontally
got
stacked the so you've got a list of two things, I guess a tuple that you're passing in, the image and the div. Okay. And they're going side by side.
exactly. Now, if I didn't
Okay.
have this div here, we don't have two things in the div H stacked. We have lots. And so you'll see they just go next to each other.
Ah, okay. Oh, I like that. Okay, cool.
And we're using Flexbox, which if anyone's struggled as much with it as I have, it's nice not to have to think about it. So
Yeah.
um, the other option for this kind of thing is, you can use a grid and have it stacked here. One of the nice things about using a grid is it's very easy for when it gets small to flatten and be a little bit responsive.
Oh yeah, that is
So
nice.
Um, Now the grid has all kinds of stuff for responsiveness to help you. So like you can see here we have the calls minimum, maximum columns. We can say, you know, how we want that responsiveness to be. Um, in this case, I think the defaults, work just fine. So we can stick with that for now.
Yeah, it
Fix it
looks
later.
good.
Okay. So we've got this. We've got a title. We've got a description. Now we have this name and date. Those are like less important. I mean, I guess not less important, but they're less, I don't necessarily need them to jump out. And so what we can do is we can add a class. Now we've got a lot of things. If you start stuff and you go like text T for transfer, you can see all these styles are available to you in a tab completed way. And these are like Franken UI strings that are just going to go into the class. So like you could say, you could go in and say like UK dash text dash muted and type that. Um, but that kind of relies on you know, programming in strings, which isn't as nice, and also just kind of like memorizing these strings. If you're like me and you have bad memory or you just don't do this stuff a lot, you can go in and say, okay, what do I want? I want muted. It's the same thing. Now, for fonts and text, we also have a little bit of a higher level, fairly picky one, where right now there's just three options. Maybe this will grow, but these are ones that like combinations of multiple of those that like I use all the time. So I'll just use the muted small one and the muted
So that's
small
the
one.
author. Okay. Oh,
I
yeah. Oh, that's really cool.
think I liked the div L aligned a little bit better. Kind of a lot of space between this image here, so I'm gonna go ahead and change that back here.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
We can do the grid later.
sure.
Um, cool. So I mentioned div fully spaced before, and this is like a
Hmm.
great chance to use it. We can say we want everything inside to be fully spaced, and you'll see splits it up for us.
Wait, let me see. So you've got, okay, so inside the div fully spaced, you've got the author and the date. Okay, so it's left and right. Okay, I see. Right.
And for yeah, so for our labels, we can use, or these categories, we can use a label. There's form labels in the library, which are made for forms. There's regular labels, which look like pills. Um, so let's map a label over all of the categories that we have. Okay,
Wow,
so that
that's
looks pretty
awesome.
good. Now we can also do this div L aligned, um, just to use our classes, and then I'll put a little bit of space between them, just so it's like a little bit more spread out.
Okay. Wow.
So
So L aligned. Okay, so you've got them left aligned, but it adds some space, but it's not like fully spaced.
yeah, exactly. They kind of
Okay.
space just they're kind of left aligned with a little bit of
Yeah.
spacing in between as a default argument, fully spaced. Yeah, just spreads them out.
Okay. Got it.
So this is kind of cool, I think, because we've made these cards and we haven't used a single class string. We've used enums that give us discoverability twice. Otherwise, everything is literally the defaults in a function.
Wow.
Um, but adding just a little bit of like class strings for like from like Tailwind, for example, can make it look a lot better. So the nice thing is you can get here quickly and then do that little bit of modification. So let's go ahead and do that. So we have this div. One thing that we can do is we can say, I want to space everything out here. And so we can say space dot y. So this is space along the y-axis. And then how much? We can say 5. See what that looks like. Yeah, so that looks kind of
Oh,
nice.
great.
If we want a little bit less, maybe. Oh, oops. Yeah,
Oh, that's good.
cool. And so for the spacing, we have a guide devoted to spacing and how to do this. And it covers, the difference between what's padding versus margin versus spacing versus gap. Because, I had a hard time. Like I didn't start this library knowing anything about design, and I needed to know the difference. And so you can see, the acronyms. If you see like PL, that means padding left, or MP, that means, or MY means margin on the y-axis, both top and bottom. And it kind of goes through and it says like, okay, what is margin versus padding? And so you can see margin, there's a lot of space to the left of the card. Padding, the space is in the inside of the card, and you can see the difference between like where you use gap. Like, okay, this is using a grid. Gap looks good, space looks bad. This first one's not quite lined up. On a form, however, gap doesn't add the spacing, space does. And so like understanding these 4 ways of adding spacing is really handy because, you know, just spreading things out often makes it look nicer. So now I'm going to add this. I'll put these cards into a grid, and we're just going to say one column. We don't necessarily need multiple columns, I don't think. By default, it added a gap. So while it's nice to know that grids use gaps, you don't necessarily need to know it because it will by default add it. We could by default it'll put them side by side. Most of the time when you have cards, you want like multiple in a row. In this case, we don't. That's why we say columns
Mm,
one.
okay.
So we can title our page, call it my blog, and you'll see up here, now I've got my blog up here in the title. It says my blog. We've got our cards. So I think this is pretty good for our main page, and we can kind of start rendering the post, create the post route. Does that sound good?
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
All right, so this page is done for now at least. All right, so let's take a post. And a post needs to take a route that's a post, needs to take in a file name. Like, I guess the easiest way to do this would be to create like a route for a getting started page and then one for a Y markdown, like duplicated every time. But instead of doing that, we want it to take an argument. So you have one route that can generate all of them. However, as I mentioned before, I like to make sure that that routes are working before I do much. So let's go to our post route and let's make sure. Okay, so this is our route post, and we're passing the file name that generates hello. So now we've got our kind of feedback loop going.
Okay.
We follow kind of the same process. So first we need, it remembers from above how to do that. Okay, it's getting a little ahead of itself there. Cursor's a little overeager. Um, and like you can like accept the suggestions, like it might have been fine. I find though that like if I like tab complete too much and don't understand what it's doing, it's really convenient at first, and then I end up with like a project that I don't understand, and it's really hard to edit. There's like stuff that's just it just ends up being bad code. So I use the tab completion for stuff, but if it's like completing more than I'm thinking in my head, I don't use that. Um,
Yeah, I like this building up piece by piece. It's nice to see the the post content here. Um, question. So you defined post, but that's post as in blog post, right? Not post as in like
oh,
post request.
that's absolutely right. I should be more clear in my names. So let's have the post be blog post instead. Cool.
Oh, great.
Okay, so we've got our content. Like we did before, we split it. If we remember, we split it up and we grabbed all the metadata. Now we need to do the same thing, but we need to grab all the content. So we can see we did content dot split. So we can say our content equals, oh, I think it might have done it for me. Let's see. Yep. So we've got our content here. So now the
Great.
way we render Markdown is we use FrankenUI's render underscore Markdown function. Let me do this div. Okay. So
Monster UIs, you mean?
oh yes, MonsterUI, yes. Okay, so we've got Markdown here. Let's make sure this is rendering properly
Oh,
so we can
beautiful.
see why I started this blog. Let's see, let's add a link about Monster UI so we can see that like links work too. Okay, okay, so we got like a nice styled link that works.
Oh, great.
Jumps the page. Now, if we go instead of Y, we go to getting started.md, we should see, okay, we've got this. It gave our code in a code block. Um,
Wow.
this is the styling is compatible. The way it's structured is compatible with Highlight.js. And so like if you use Highlight.js, it just works seamlessly. It's like um the only thing that yeah, so Highlight.js, I don't have it integrated yet. I wasn't sure if I should try and like detect what language you're using or and all that stuff, but um yeah, for now
So
it just gives you this.
the headers for Highlight JS you'd add separately, right? Like they're not
That's right.
included in. Okay,
That's right. That might change someday but for now.
sure,
All
sure.
right. Um, cool. So instead of a div, we can use a container. And a container is a div, but it just gives you a little bit of this margin, which is kind of nice. It's not like run into the edge of the page.
Great.
If you wanted a little bit more, you can use container T, the transform again, and you can see we've got some different ones. Like if you pick a
Oh,
small
great.
container, it's got a little bit more margin. And you can see like even large, it's depending on what you're looking to do. Um, for this, I think the default works just fine, but depending on the content you've got. Okay, so we can render them, which is nice, but I can't get to them, which is not nice. So let's fix that. So, there's a couple of things we could do. Let's let's add a read more button first. So I want to show buttons. So we have we can do another div fully spaced where we put all of our labels in there in the div. So that's the first element in our fully spaced div. And the second one can be a button where we'll see, let's say, see here. We can do an anchor tag with button styling. Um, what we'll say is read more.
Sure.
We can say href is equal to our blog post with the file name passed to it.
Great.
And internal server error. Wonderful. Okay, there we go.
So in here, you're for your href, you're passing in the blog post function, is that right? And then dot two.
Yeah, and this is a fast HTML thing. Like I could do like slash blog post like query parameter f name equals like f name. Like I
Mhm.
could do that. Um, this is just a bit of a more convenient way that I can just I'm working in Python. I can use it like Python.
Yeah, that's nice.
Okay, so I have this read more. I click and it takes me to the blog. We can style this a little bit better. So we can add a class. We are going to add a little bit of custom styling. We'll say it is a UK button. And then I'm going to use a button T and make it a primary button. Um, so there's several button T styles. We can see them, you can see all of them here. You see default buttons don't stand out very much. Danger buttons, those are great for like a delete action, like do I want to delete this record or something? Destructive actions. Primary are really nice for, anything you really want to like stand out, kind of your call to actions, your add to cart, your purchase, whatever. Um, that works very well. And so we'll use that styling. And we get a little read more
Oh,
button.
great. And so
And
the primary color comes from that. I guess it's well, you've got that blue theme, so it changes the primary color depending on the theme.
that's right. And we can actually show that quickly here. So let's go to themes. There is a theme picker. And if you see the source, you can copy this and I can make a theme route.
Oh wow.
So I'm gonna copy paste that in there. And now we can go to our theme route. So I
Oh,
can
that's
say,
fancy. I love
I
it.
don't know, a light blue theme, for example. You can see it's a blue button.
Wow.
So, um, cool. So we have this read more. The last one thing we can do is we can do this exact same thing here and add this href on the image. So you can click the image. A lot of times people
Oh,
just make
great.
the image clickable. I like having a read more button. Like I feel like it's, I don't know, clearer.
Yeah, I'd
But
agree.
um, But yeah, so now you click the image, you can click here to get there. So now we have two routes. Do you have 15 more minutes?
Oh, yes, I do.
Okay. So the one last thing maybe we'll show is we've got this blog kind of working, but we have two routes. We've got this main route and we've got a theme route. You might build an about route for like an about me. Um, we're not going to do that now because you can see how to render Markdown, so you can use Markdown for that.
Sure.
You know how to render an image if you want to use an image, and so combining that same stuff is how you can build an about me page. But a nav bar is pretty useful to have, so let's go ahead and build that. What we'll do is we will start with a nav bar. So let's see, blog nav. And we really don't need to know anything about the nav bar for a basic nav bar. And so we don't need to pass anything to it. We can just have this function with no arguments. Now, working on figuring out a higher level API for this. But the general idea is you have a nav bar and all of the stuff works this way. Once I start with navbar, I can see the tab completion shows everything related to a navbar I might need.
Oh,
So that's
great.
how I recommend starting. It goes navbar. So the first thing I need is the container. The next thing I need to do is tell it where in the container do things go. And so you can see there's a right side, there's a left side, and there's a center. So let's start with left side, and we'll do the kind of the simplest thing here. We'll
Okay.
do navbar left side. Let's put an H3 that just says my blog. I'm going to get rid of this.
So you just changed titled to be title, like the title tag.
Exactly. So that makes it still here, but you see I don't have the my
Okay.
blog here.
Right.
And the
Yeah.
reason is because I'm going to put that up in the nav bar.
Oh, nice.
And so you see I'm going to say title, my blog nav, and then the rest of my stuff. And the blog nav has a nav bar container, has a nav bar left side with my blog in it. So we've got it up here.
Oh, exciting.
Now we need a nav bar. Again, I can go down and I can find it here, the right side. And now again, we go to nav bar and we do this tab completion. And instead of like regular content, because as you can see, you can put any kind of fast HTML content. You can put buttons or search bars or inputs or anything in the nav bar. I want a navigation element, a nav bar nav, which is something built for the nav bar, and it's a navigation element. And a nav bar nav does not take that cursor. Um, it takes lists. So you can see there's li here. So
Oh, great.
inside of it, it's going to take a list item. And you can see this is a simple navigation element. Here's like another one that has a little bit more. This would be like good for like a sidebar navigation type thing, which is actually what this uses. So another example is just to the left. You can see how a nav bar is created with like drop downs and like different things. Again, all the
So
sources here.
in that example, those are so the active parent item, those are all li elements so
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
list. Okay. Oh,
So you
wow.
can see here's a list. This is the parent one.
Okay.
And inside that, I'm going to put a navigation element.
Oh,
It's a
great.
nav bar,
Wow.
So all of these you see are lists. Now, to get this like drop down effect, these are nested lists,
Oh, okay.
styled specifically. But yeah, and so you see here's a nav subtitle that goes in it. It's going inside the list. But yeah, basically it's lists under the hood.
Very cool.
So let's see here. We have a navigation element, and the first thing, because it takes a list item, we can let's just start with um, home, and we'll do an href if index. And so we see our home route, and we click it, it takes us back home. That's our first one. Now, a lot of times people will just do like the slash string, and that's totally fine. Again, I just like to pass the function because it's like it tells me if I change the name of a function, like I can like refactor it, it can tell me when things aren't linked up. Um,
That's nice. And you don't have to put dot two because you're not passing parameters, right?
exactly. There's no arguments,
Okay.
so I don't need it. Um, so the next thing we need is anchor tag for our theme. And I can just go to the theme route. That's all there is
Oh,
to it.
cool.
So now that we have this blog nav and this theme route, instead of returning our UK theme switcher, we'll do blog nav, comma that. So now we can go to theme route, back home.
Oh, wow.
So
Oh, that's amazing.
yeah, so this is kind of how I kind of start building up a blog. You might want an about page, but again, you can render images. You've got like different kinds of ways to make different formats. You can render Markdown nicely. Just to give an idea, we looked at this spacing guide. I mean, this is all Markdown rendered stuff.
Wow.
I didn't do special styling, so you can see quotes end up well. Um, Obviously, these flippable cards aren't Markdown, but everything else is.
Cool.
So this is a guide on how to use grids and flex for layouts. So that's another good one. But
Oh, wow.
I think that covers.
Oh,
So yeah.
can we do we want to add the nav to the blog to the individual blog posts?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we can do that with we take our blog nav and here we can just go blog nav, comma, container. So then I read more. I can
Oh,
navigate back
great.
home. Now, a lot of times, like if you only have 3 pages, this is perfectly fine. A lot of times, what I'll end up doing is I'll create a layout function that like adds this, and so then everything will return like layout container because I might want more stuff on the page than just a nav
Mhm.
bar. Um,
Right.
so you can kind of refactor this to say like my layout goes into this, and then the standard page layout goes on every page. But if all you got is just a nav bar, you can just do your nav, comma, and then the rest of the content, and it just kind of works.
Cool.
So yeah, that's the those are the pages. The index, we got the theme, and
Wow.
each post in the posts folder, these 2 posts, get a card. We can link to it with this read more button or the image.
Oh, that's great. Well, it's amazing. I mean, it just looks so good so fast. That's power of Monster UI. That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's only 50 lines of code, you know, and it's not as spread out. Like I'm not using a linter. You can use, your favorite linter and make the lines of code bigger. But it's not it's not a ton of code. And what I really like is that like I can understand it. Like I'm not a big
Yeah.
web person. Like I started doing this when I started building this library pretty much shortly before it. And like what I really like here is like H stack. Like I can understand stacking things horizontally. I can understand fully spacing things,
Yeah.
but all the flex classes, are tricky. And when we look at like what goes in to just, you know, making this page here,
Mhm.
Um, let's pick, let's see, one of these. So first of all, there's like those. Like when we look at like, here is our div left aligned, and like that's a lot of stuff
Mhm.
to type and remember and get wrong. And so all these class strings, where it's UK flex between, UK flex middle, a width of 101, um, it really helps, I think, me to be able to like code in things that are kind of intuitive. Like if I see this, I really have to think about what's happening, um, and write the string. I much rather have something I can get tab completion and discoverability, and it's a little bit more concise because fully spacing things is something I want to do all the time. All right. Well, I guess I think that's everything for today. Is there any last thoughts, or should we just end the video now?
Yeah, well, this was great, Isaac. Thank you for inviting me to to join you. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, this was great. You were very helpful. This was a lot of fun. So hopefully we do this again sometime.
Sounds good.
All right. Bye.
All right, bye.